Well, there's a new wrinkle in the Ghislaine Maxwell verdict. We talked recently on the show about how she was convicted and then it was going to be sentencing after that. But now there's news that one of the jurors was a past victim of sexual abuse and apparently did discuss this during jury deliberations. It's not clear if it was disclosed ahead of time, but that might be cause for a mistrial. Obviously, Maxwell's lawyers are going to attempt to argue that. I understand that, so the judge is considering looking at this. So this could, this could result in a mistrial, actually.
And there's apparently a second who had someone close to them who was a victim.
Right.
And both of these jurors spoke about these situations during the deliberations and talked about how it was influential in the
Which
process.
I don't know that that's a issue in and of itself.
It's not, as long as they disclosed it.
As long as they disclosed it, but it's not clear that they did.
Right, and so right now the paperwork is sealed, but the judge obviously has access to it. Reuters, and it was a Reuters reporter, I believe, who spoke to the one who was the victim, him or herself, and asked if they disclosed it. And they said, I kind of flew through the paperwork, and I don't remember there being a question on there about that. And so, everyone's had that experience of flying through paperwork, and you're not exactly looking very closely. And so whether or not she gets a mistrial or not could depend on where this person's pen was.
So there has to be a question on the questionnaire about this.
Right, so there is one. Now, this person doesn't remember there being one. Now the question is, did their pen slide over yes or no? And that is everything for Maxwell. If their pen checked yes, and then the defense didn't raise any alarms about this and just allowed it to go through, then she's out of luck. Assuming that this holds for both of the jurors who this applies to. But if the juror checked no, not paying attention, and then later discussed it, it's quite plausible that could be a mistrial.
Expect a mistrial if that's the case. And man, the likelihood of getting a conviction on a second trial, it drops substantially. You could still convict her, obviously, right. but the general theory is that now the defense knows exactly what the prosecution's strategy is.
Maybe the press would actually cover the second trial. give the press a second shot at not covering.
Maybe there won't be there won't be the Omicron pressure to hey, we got to wrap this up because the pandemic's coming back. So they obviously want the defense wants a mistrial. They want to. Maybe then instead of having another trial, the prosecution might be more likely to offer a more favorable deal. Obviously, that didn't occur. But they might say, we don't really want to go through this again.
Right, and maybe she takes it.
Maybe it's just probation. Maybe it's just house arrest or something.
Right.
Which would be an insult to the victims. So this is a bad screw up that could really result in her not getting the justice she deserves.
And the questionnaire includes harassment as well, which would basically mean every woman in America would be checking yes.
Especially if you know someone who is.
Well, yes, if you know someone.
Every person on Earth
in America
knows someone who has faced sexual harassment.
Right, but that doesn't mean you can't be on the jury. It just means that what it does is it allows the defense to question you. Can you still be impartial about harassment or about abuse or trafficking, despite X, Y, Z, right? And if they didn't get that, and the judge is going to apparently talk to other jurors and see, it does appear that this conversation among the jurors played a significant role, and you could see how it could, in the room, if somebody's telling you, I was a victim of this thing,
right.
For you then to say, I want a verdict of not guilty, is then telling them that their experience is invalid. And that's the kind of pressure that these things try to
I mean,
avoid.
if the juror was in that exact situation, they could, explain how, well, just because I seemed to consent, I was underage,
Right.
and I'm unable and I was manipulated, and you don't understand what that's like.
No, I think there's some value, and in that sense, there's real value in having people who've experienced it.
But it has to be disclosed because the defense has to have an opportunity to challenge that juror on that basis. So this is a screw up. I mean, this happens sometimes. Guilty people go free because of
and also
technicalities.
If this were just a normal trial, we would never have learned about this. The only reason we know is because the media did actually didn't cover as much as we would have liked.
So this juror talked to the media is how we're learning this.
Right, and jurors don't normally talk to the media because the media doesn't care about 99.99% of trials. So nobody would have ever found out that this was the case. So in other words, this type of thing is happening to defendants all the time. But this time it just happened to come out because the juror was like, yeah, I was a victim of abuse myself, and I told that story to the jury. And to the reporter's credit, they're like, really? That's very interesting.
Right.
Did you disclose that beforehand? I don't remember being asked. Oh.
And you have to imagine if they go forward with another trial, so then they're picking a new jury, the defense is going to be a lot more careful about this. They're going to make sure. Did you see question number 47?
Right.
And what was your answer? What was your answer?
Yeah. But then you've then you've kind of monkeyed with the jury pool because it also is awkward to be saying, I don't want anyone who's ever been the victim of abuse to be on this, because then you're admitting that you are an abuser in a way.
Right.
You're charged.
I guess
with
you're saying
abuse.
you're accused of abuse, so you don't want someone. Yeah. But man, it's a mess. I can't believe we could have this trial again. At first, when I saw this headline, I'm going like, well, how big a deal is this actually? And then I'm looking at it like, this is definitely a big deal.
Yeah.
It could be. So we'll have more to discuss on this subject, I'm sure, in the future, and we'll have more Rising right after this.